All right, so I'm finally getting back on YouTube, rebranding. If any of my subscribers know who I am, that's cool. That's fine. Um, I had to restart making this video because I got fucking cut off. It's annoying ass shit. But anyway, I'm back. Um, people have been definitely pushing me to make videos, and I have a lot to say. And been through a lot when I left. Since I've left. So um, this is kind of like an introductionary video, um, just talking about my life um, briefly and how it pertains to men's issues, uh, human nature, uh, dating, and miscellaneous. So yeah, this is just gonna be a brief summary about my life. A brief summary about my life, and what I say in this, I'll go more in depth in separate videos. Um, so yeah, this is just a framework to start out with. So anyway, let's just get started, right? So I guess it all started when, not to be corny, but from my childhood, right? So let's just start from like elementary. Um, I was a very shy kid, introverted kid, which for boys, I think people will think that's a negative trait to have in boys, you know, um, introverted, shy, which could explain a lot of hostility towards me um, perfectly, I think, from other kids my age, more so rather than adults, because because you have this whole thing about like, oh, like kids with ADHD, they're hard to manage, right? So it's always boys being targeted, right? So you can't win. But I think it's worse. It may be biased, but if you're shy as a boy in school, the students are going to treat you worse rather than the adults. I think adults would rather have a quiet kid in a way, even though they would still probably project negative aspects to that kid, right? So that's a subject for a different video. Um, so anyway, yeah, shy kid growing up, introverted, you know, but I still have good groups and stuff like that. Still like go over, play video games with all my friends. I remember like in elementary, I like got beat up as well. Like I don't know I just remember getting beat up. I don't remember crying or anything, right? I just got beat up and like took it to the chin, literally, you know, literally dust myself off after that, right? Um, and a lot of a big reason why I was just shy as a kid, or this is like a chicken egg question, right? I think, because I had stuff in my life that I went through um, in my house that made me very scared of people in general, which I could go more in depth, right? Which which got me distrusting of people from an early age, right? So uh, I don't think that's good in any regard. Um, like no one would want that. Um, would say, yeah, I wish I had that. So yeah, there's just like this fear at home I already had. Like I was scared of my own parents, right? And so when I was at school, obviously I'd be scared of my classmates and stuff like that. So anyway, and that scaredness I think causes more hostility towards you as a boy. Um, so yeah. So anyway, going to which I could talk about that in a different, more in depth in a video, which I am. Uh, so anyway, fast forward to middle school, I was like, whatever, still cool. My friend had a friend group, and was pretty. That's like around time. you're like more interested in girls rather than just like some elementary like schoolyard love, you know. Basically, I had no luck. Beside with some girl that I didn't even want to go. Like one girl that I even wasn't like attracted to. Like we went out to a dance or something like that. Just shit like that. So I was very like unpopular with girls, even though some girls would like show attention to me, right? But I just was so shy a lot of times, and I didn't really know how to react. Um, but it was still middle school, you know. I was still like thinking about like sex, you know, as much like in high school because I think that changes everything, right? So yeah, I do that. It was still cool, you know. I had a friend group, cool friend group. But you know, when I joined high school, um, I had you know quit sports and stuff like that. Again, I had quit sports and wasn't really involved in school, and I was forming my own identity. Right, that's what happens in high school. I think more than middle school. Right, you try to you conceptualize yourself as an individual, right? Form all these a worldview or whatever, your likes and dislikes, all through the while figuring out. You know what's you can't put a finger on how like human nature is, but you're trying to figure it out, right? So I quit all sports in high school, wasn't involved with anything, you know. Hold on, I gotta sneeze. Sorry. Excuse me. Um, so yeah, in high school I was basically low status as you know, we're gonna use, you know, here on this channel we're gonna be stressing status because that's what life is about, a hierarchy and uh having social proof and status, right? That's all synonymous anyway. So in high school you could say I was low status, you know, didn't really have a friend group because I quit sports, quit the clubs, and my old friend group, I didn't want to hang out with them anymore because I was in a way trying to gain status, right? But then which was me playing sports and they didn't do sports. And so I basically like lost my old friend group, lost a new one. And I was just all by myself throughout high school, essentially. Um, but again, like, um, there would be girls who would like come on to me and, you know, that I would talk to, but I was just so like scared and inexperienced and naive that I didn't know what to do at the time, right? Because if a girl likes you, most of the time she will put herself in a place for you to ask her out and to quote unquote make the first move, right? So I was just too petrified and I guess seduced in a way to say anything, right? I was so nervous, you know, because I was by myself. I had no one and I had no one else to tell me like how it really was, right? um so I was just young and ignorant to how what girls find attractive and shit like that, and what you're supposed to do. And I was being gaslit, right? About like confidence and shit like that. Um, just stupid ass shit, like whether I'd hear from my like um, older males, so whether it be my dad or like older cousins or my friends. Well, I didn't have really friends, right? To we even talk about that, it would just be like me saying, "Oh, I'll get it with these girls," but I end up failing, right? So anyway, in the midst of conversation when we talk about girls. So it wasn't a big deal. Um, you know, just like, whatever. And, you know, in high school, like, you know, I just watched porn, right? So from an early age, for some reason, I was like, oh, well, I'm just gonna over mate, you know, I'm a virgin and I'm not having sex, but at least I got porn, you know, which is still the sentiment I still have today, right? But I'll get to it. It's just like, oh, well, I can't get sex. Well, at least I got porn, you know. Feels good, right? Which I'll get to that. And then, so go through high school, no, basically barely passing, no good friend group, no good friend, and no success with women, you know, no scholarships, none of that. I hated school, kind of average intelligence, right? Basically just average. So anyway, I finished that. In high school, I did have a job. So I just remained in that job, like from like junior year all the way to like 2022. But in that job, I did kind of like working that job did kind of get me like, made me more talkative and forced me to socialize more. I'm not saying like socializing makes you happier or anything, but I think it is good to be able to hold conversation with people, as boring as they may seem, or how would you explain this? Like, just like small talk, boring ass conversation. That's the only thing I can think of right now. So working in that job, did kind of get me understand social cues and like read body language and shit like that. So I was like, okay, like, yeah, I know how to talk more and stuff. I talk to more people, because in high school, I would never really talk to anyone, really. I would just fucking sit at my desk, fucking do my work, play fucking cool math games or whatever the fuck. Doom or some fucking Flash game. I don't know. And I'm sorry, I had to burp. And I hope the audio doesn't sound bad. Like I said, my S's sound pretty horrible, and my hearing is kind of fucked right now. I'm recording this last message because I'm dying. No. Anyway, yeah. So, yeah. When I joined the workforce, I definitely got me. I was so slow. I had to. I was in customer service and shit like that. So I had no other choice, right? And then obviously I was like, okay, like let me go start talking to women now. See what I can do. And I would watch like stupid ass. This is where I like really started like watching videos about like dating and shit like that, and like they're intertwined, right? Like dating and like men's issues and stuff like that, being deselected, which being deselected is gonna be a reoccurring theme we talk about here on this channel. So I got into like watching like these dudes who would go around college campuses and like spitting game or some dumb shit like that, charisma or something, or like just put yourself out there, or see, it takes nothing to just go up to a woman and talk to her, stupid shit like that. I've watched like men's lifestyle fashion or some shit, 5 ways to flirt or some shit. It was just so fucking cringe, dude. And I did, I would go to girls like that, and I did get their number sometimes, but it would never lead to anything. I will be honest with that. Because it was still coming from a place of like scam shit, pickup artistry, snake oil, right? So yeah, so it's just like, sure, you get the number, sure, you go out taking her dinner, whatever, which at that time I already knew I was reluctant to do that, because I knew there was guys who didn't have to do all this bullshit, and it just naturally, right? Whether it be looks or anything, which we'll talk about right now with that. So, I never, at my job, I never really met any girls, right? But, which I wasn't a virgin then. I did, well, actually, in high school, I was a virgin, right? Just because anytime I would get the opportunity to have sex, it would just be with girls like I didn't really find attractive, really, And I know when I say this, right, it's gonna sound bad. Like, I had watched a lot of porn then, but I'm not blaming the porn for like a looks thing, right? I just didn't feel like the looks, number one, looks is a factor. The looks level and just like the personal like mutual like connection, right? Which I know again I'm sounding like a dude talking about this Disney movie bullshit, but I just didn't feel anything there, right? I don't like talking to this girl, nor did I like looking at her, right? Uh, am I allowed to say that? Not, no, I am allowed to say that. We can say whatever we want here, right? It's like you can't say that girls are ugly. You don't like talking to her. You know, it's a you thing. Yeah. So, but like in fucking at my job, I remember like my first like this is basically the first time I got laid. I was like 19 or something like that. You know, even though I had opportunities in high school, like twice with two different girls. Like actually, like fucking, like I got my dick sucked in high school, but I never like fucking had sex. And there were some girls who would like come on to me, but I was too stupid and seduced and too shy because they were too attractive. I guess you know I was too scared. But anyway, like yeah, it wasn't until like I got to my job, and I remember like I forget which one came first. There was this girl like who some Mexican girl. She had like huge ass tits. I don't even remember. I mean, I remember her name. I like got her number and shit like that. I remember again. She just sucked my dick like 5 in the morning, and she's like, "If you ever want to like do the rest, just let me know." I never did, right? She wasn't that ugly, really. She wasn't ugly at all. You know, I mean, that's just crazy that she traveled at 5 in the morning, and it was like behind like a fire house that where she sucked my dick in the back of her truck and shit like that. But yeah, so yeah, and like, and you know, at my retail job, I would like fucking try to like pick up, you know, all my coworkers, not all of them, you know, like sparingly, right? And even like some of the customers, right? But you know, which is stupid, right? I was just, you know, looking back, it is kind of stupid, but hey, I mean, uh, I guess there's no harm, no foul. You know, it could have been worse. Shit could have gotten worse because you know the climate of just like, you know, a girl could just label you a creep or something and be like, get this guy, you know. So which we'll talk about that in future videos. Um, but you know, the cold approach thing, which is pickup artistry, you know, it could work, which it did, right? So like, that's what I'm gonna say right now. Um, I talked to this customer who was at my check lane and like got her number or whatever. It started like a conversation where like, oh, she's visiting out of town, and it was an older woman too, right? Which every guy likes older women, right? Um, she's like, I'm visiting out of town and I'm just gonna see what's up around here. And then I was just like stupid in a way. I was just like, oh well, like we could go like see the stuff, see around town, and if you wanna, if you're down for that. She's like, sure, sure. And I still remember like there was like a person behind them in line and shit. And I got her number, and like 2 days later, like she was at a hotel and stuff like that. Her fucking make temporary housing, whatever, because she traveled for work. That's why she was in town, and you know we didn't even do what the conversation, what we agreed, you know, to do in conversations. One thing led to another, right? We just ended up having sex in her hotel room. So yeah, that's basically where I lost my V card, and um, yeah, it was just like it was cool. Uh, you know, I saw her again one other time, and then you know, since we had like conflicting schedules, that only saw her twice, and then like we just ended up I ended up cutting her off. You know, just you know, just, oh, okay, well, we're not gonna have sex again, and um, there's no point in this, right? Because at that rate, you know, going separate from that fact, you know, I'm gonna pause that little section of this story of my story. Like back in the day, I would want to, like in high school, I would want to get in a relationship to get sex, right? I would think you would have to be in a relationship to get sex. And like I said, I didn't have no friends to tell me that, oh yeah, uh, you could get sex without it, right? Even though I knew guys were doing it, but I didn't know how to do it, right? So anyway, yeah. So I was just like, if at that rate, I'm already in the mindset. I only want to be with the girls to get sex, right? I don't care about going on dates, which I still don't really. I just never really got the appeal of it. Anyway, yeah. So we had sex, cut her off, and it's funny how that relationship, it wasn't a relationship. How that little, what would you call it? Incursion happened, which I'll talk about it because it was interesting. It has something to do with like a lesbian relationship. But anyway, I'll save that for later. I've told some people this story before, but I could tell it here so more people could hear. But anyway, so I was just working, I did that, and like, it's kind of hard to say. So anyway, I was still watching the YouTube videos about like dating and shit like that. In a way, I knew it was kind of bullshit, right? So something fell off, right? I was like, there's no way you could just go and just talk your way into having sex with women. It just makes no fucking sense, right? I never bought into it. So anyway, it was around during the pandemic where I had discovered fucking like the red pill was exploding, right? Like Fresh and Fit, Andrew Tate, Kevin Samuels, and sorry, I had to close the door. Kevin Samuels, shit like that was just everywhere on YouTube. This alpha male, beta male alpha, which these terms go back in internet history with like the pickup artist stuff and the red pill, the black pill, blue pill. It was already old by that point. It just became mainstream when it got to YouTube and was exploding. I didn't know that at the time, right? You know, um, I didn't know about MGTOW. I didn't know about like incels. I didn't know about like uh, the MRM. Just nothing about men's groups. I knew nothing about it, right? It's just never really, you're young. You're just living your life. You're just trying to survive school, trying to get laid. Having fun with your friends. Just basic shit. So I discovered the red pill, and I definitely indulged in it. Not indulged in the sense where like, oh, I was like, I want to be this alpha male or whatever. But they would say some things that were correct about like, let's say the gender dynamics. Like a man needs to make money, right? You have to provide something as a man, which is true. Men aren't loved unconditionally, which is true. And you have to be pandering to women, which is true, right? And still, all that's still true, right? But they would spin it in a way where it's just like, where it came, like some people also say, I've heard, it came from a place of um, like they were acting in a way where they wanted men to live vicariously through them by donating to them, like to live out fantasies of like saying like, fuck you girls, like, you guys are sluts, whores, whatever, like Myron, Fresh and Fit, or like with MGTOW. I guess that was a common thing with MGTOWs, which I didn't know at the time. I didn't know this. I wouldn't say this feeling is explicitly MGTOW. It's just a feeling men have, right? There's like this meme where like, you didn't want me when I was down bad on my luck in high school, whatever. It'll show like this dude carrying like this heavy ass backpack, and he's a nerd. It's like, you'll see one day, I'll be like a CEO, that type of mentality, right? It's kind of the same thing where men say, oh, women are going to die alone with cats, right? Kind of the same shit. So I always knew that it just didn't make sense because I would see girls, like, they wouldn't, like, care that they were single, right? I always kind of knew in my mind, like, they didn't really care about men like that. where's the equivalent to the red pill for women, right? There is none, right? So I was just like, this is just bullshit. So I would tune in sometimes because sometimes it would be funny. Like with Fresh and Fit, I would laugh. It was just a show to me, right? They'd be like, "Fuck you, bitch," like, he just insulted women. It was just like all just one charade and shit like that. And there was like whole drama with them, and it was definitely like interesting where they got exposed for being scamming. Who would have thought, So so yeah, when I saw Fresh and Fit get scammed, I'm like, okay, well I know this whole thing is a scam. That's 100% full proof it's a scam, right? And then I like discovered Sneeko and shit like that, which I never watched Sneeko before because I know like people will say Sneeko made good videos, I guess, with Mr. Beast. I mean, they just look like stupid, like motivational slop shit. I don't know. It's just his videos look fucking stupid. I'm not gonna lie. Like, what is your mark on life? Which is there's nothing bad with that type of comment, that type of content, right? Motivation or just like social commentary, right? There's nothing really wrong per se. It's just his shit just looks kind of boring. I was really watching Sneeko for like the gender dynamics and like dating, even though he would like promote like shit that doesn't make sense, right? It was just you could tell it was just to make men feel comfortable like living this kind of delusion. Uh, but he made good points. That's the thing. Scammers make good points. Like people who sell you bullshit make good points. It's a salesman tactic. So anyway, yeah, I was watching them, and then like I discovered like black pill shit on YouTube next. So, uh, I had knew about like incels from the past in a way. I know like I've seen a video from like ITV, which he's now Rehab Room, a long time ago, and I knew about that Elliot Rodger thing because again, that was like a mainstream thing even before Elliot Rodger thing happened. It existed, right? So I knew it was just like whatever. It's just news of the week here in America, whatever. Um, didn't care. Just like I was young at that rate. It's just like the fucking housing crisis. Like I was too young to like for it to be of note to me. My only focus was like shit, like new fucking Call of Duty map pack just drop or some shit. Fucking a FIFA mobile or fucking video games or like sitting the benches at my football games. But anyway, uh, yeah. So I had seen like black pill shit. Like one of the first channels was like fucking ITV, which I forget. I'm forgetting the timeline literally because I don't know if I saw ITV and then he deleted, became Rehab Room because it was kind of close, right? Because he was already old by that point when I discovered him. I don't know, but I remember that like his intro with like the stupid ass black pills with the TV in them, and he's like with that intro, it's like I know you're from the incel community from the Law and Order episode. I don't know, some shit with the burning car in the background. So I remember that. But again, I didn't think it was like, oh, okay, this is incel culture now. Or like I didn't know what it was, right? But so yeah, and then so I had seen like there's this dude fucking I discovered DBDR, right? Which he's not really like black pill, but it is black pill coded. All this shit, he uses the terms, uh, and just the format of how he would make his videos was like. As I was speaking to someone about this too, they were like true forced loneliness, which again predates DBDR, what also existed on YouTube for a while now, separate from like black pill and shit like that, you know. So I discovered DBDR. I discovered wheat waffles, which I was never a fan of, right? But they would beg the question about looks, about like it, you know, as men we're taught to like, okay, we could just be confident, go to a girl, be nice to her, whatever, just be normal, be nice, all this fucking fake bullshit. Uh, but they never said, okay, you need to look a certain way. Okay, which we know intrinsically looks do matter, right? So like we have the whole Peter Parker, you had the jock nerd dynamic, right? The bully and the nerd dynamic, right? So We know that exists, but people don't bring it into question, right? Whether it does make people uncomfortable, right? The black pill, talking about your attractiveness level, which some people who I'm associated with do downplay looks. I think more than they don't give them as much. They don't give as much credit as should be given, in my opinion. But that's a separate video for another day. This is not a black pill channel. So yeah, I discovered the black pill on YouTube. There was this dude called CBP, which apparently he was coach black pill. He was actually pretty cool. And again, they would never like say like incel shit. Like it was never like the Stacys. Although they would use the terms, they were like, you know, it's so over for me. Although DBDR did do it, you know. But he would make like a funny twist to it, right? It's almost like a character in a way. And CBP was just like social dynamics, gender dynamics, dating. You know, he would call out like the red pill and shit like that. So I was like, okay, I really fuck with this guy. And he would say like, if you go into a bar, of course the good looking guy's gonna get the fucking girls, you know. You know, of course women are gonna pick the most attractive man in a scenario where they have the same status, which I didn't know about. I didn't stress him. I wasn't focusing on the importance of status at that time, right? It was just about looks. And me in a way, I was like, oh shit, like girls just fucking go up to you if you're good looking, and we'll just make it easier for good looking, which I already knew that, right, back in high school. And all these times in like my jobs sometimes were, but I was just so shy, like I didn't know where it was coming from, right? So anyway, I was just like, okay, well, like this is the way I'm gonna live my life through this black pill. You know, it taught me. I did learn a lot watching that type of content, right? It just be like, you know, about the gender dynamics, you know, philosophy, as you know, corny as it sounds, you know, you could question the like motivations that okay, it just stems from insecurity that you can't get women. That's fine, you know. I'll be honest, yeah, that was my thing, you know. Which I do believe that's what led me here to what I'm about to say later. So yeah, I was just like, okay, like I learned about philosophy, you know, dating, you know, how it really is. You know, there's a lot of, and at the time too, I was like dabbling in like religion because I was never brought up religious, right? But it was still like bring up like, you know, I wasn't aware of like terms like tradcon, but I was getting more aware of them. Like, okay, you got these religious dudes who like, you know, I was just questioning a lot of things at that time. You know, I was just never surrounded by people who I'd have conversations to have conversations like this with. I'm pretty sure a lot of other kids my age, I probably already had conversations like that, but I was just late to the party. But who knows? I'm probably giving people more credit than they are, but I mean, people are just liars, honestly. So I think they honestly have. They just don't want to speak about this because again, it makes people uncomfortable. So like, I would learn about atheism in black pill circles, and I was never on forums and everything. I would just watch YouTube videos. You know, I was never like, oh yeah, let me go on forums and go rage out about women real quick. You know, although I would post rants on my social media like a dumbass. You know, but I was never like these fucking hoes. You know, it was just I never really got the appeal of that, right? Uh, Although I would have some frustration of when I'm like, man, fuck them. They could go fucking take a hike, you know, go fucking walk off a cliff. I wouldn't care. Which to me, that's still the same mindset I view. I mean, I don't give a fuck what they do, right? Just don't fucking fuck with me and try to gaslight me, you know. But anyway, yeah, learn about atheism, you know, philosophy, the human nature. You know, there's like this whole genetic determinism thing with like black pill, like being born lucky, which that's still true, right? You know, some people are just born, you know, people do not live the same lives. It's all relative. Um, some people could just like be super smart, but if they don't have the money to get into schooling, or they lived in like a area where they're gonna get shot or some shit, or like they go hungry or get bombed, then there's nothing they can do about that, really. There's not enough work they can do to get out of that situation, right? There's some people who grew up in war zones and places where they don't know they're gonna fucking wake up tomorrow because they go hungry or some shit, you know, which that's still true. Anyway, so yeah, you know, I got that job. I lost my job at that time too, so um, I was just like, fuck. And that's when I made my YouTube channel. It was a gaming channel, um, which is the same one here, but I just rebranded. So yeah, I was just watching that content, and I was just like, yeah, I'm just gonna live my life again. I was still, you know, in a way you could call this passive behavior, like meeting girls. Like, every man has a drive to meet women, right? But I was just like, if it comes to me, it comes to me. You know, if I see a girl, I ask her out, and whatever. She denies me. But I knew in my mind, I was like, oh, she just doesn't find me attractive, you know. So whatever, I could live with at peace, you know. I don't have to be stressing out about, oh, was it something I said? Was it some, something, some shit like that, you know. Just oh, she just found me physically unattractive, so like I can move on. So yeah, I found that I was unemployed for like a big gap, but I found a job at a clothing shop, and um, yeah, like I had like a lot of like interactions with girls, and I did meet a lot of girls there. Like I remember, like I'm trying to think because if I try to list all the times I've had sex, like I'm not trying to like flex, like uh, I did like meet a lot of girls at that job, like one, two, like uh, and then at that time I remember one of my exes from high school, which she wasn't that ugly. One of my exes from high school like hit me up and we had sex. It was just all coincidental, right? So it's just strange how these things happen, right? So my ex called me from high school, and then she's like, "Oh, I just want sex." And I was like, "Okay, well, you know, I fucked her, whatever." And I didn't think nothing of it, right? I didn't want a relationship, and I was like, "Okay, she just found me physically attractive, and she just wanted sex, and yeah, that's it." It's like, just do this, Whoever comes my way finds me physically attractive, wants to have sex, you know, fuck it. And at my job, I met like one, uh, two, uh, like three girls there. And like one of them was like a long term relationship. Not a relationship, again, because I don't like relationships. We would just have sex, and I would go over to her house sometimes and like buy her food, and she'd buy me beers and stuff. We'd go to movies, but I never announced like, this is my girlfriend now, guys. Like I never been like that, It's just like, in high school I did do some cringe ass shit like that. Uh, at a certain point I was like, this shit is so stupid, Which so anyway, yes, and then once I started getting sex, I wanted more sex, right? So yeah, I just like just continue working at that job. I'd had some girls like come up to me, get my number. I remember one girl uh it's like it was just so bad, like because she lived out of town, and every time we try to meet up, I'd be gone. I was at like the end, like fucking watching a game somewhere. Like I remember I traveled to watch some football game, and she invited me to Halloween party. It just never worked out and stuff like that. Which I don't want to say all my interactions with fucking all the women who I've had sex with, because it would take a while. Like, oh, like we started here. So anyway, I feel like I've already went on too long with this anyway, with all the personal details, which I said I'm gonna do later. So anyway, let me get back to the timeline. So anyway, I do that, have sex. I get a lot of sex. I quit that job because I wanted more money, and then I get at this other job. I met some girl. Again, like with the black pill stuff in my mind. Anytime I would get with a girl, I wouldn't be like, some dude would be like, okay, I'm ditching the black pill now. It's like, oh, it what I do disproves the black pill. It's like I always knew it to be true, which I still do in a way. Not the black pill ideology, just the way physical attractiveness goes, and like just when a girl chooses a guy for sex, that still holds true. But I'm gonna tell you why in a long term relationship, if the black pill doesn't work for long term relationships, right? Which I can get on about that later. So, yeah, I met this girl. We had again, it was like a long-term relationship. You know, very interesting that relationship as well. It taught me a lot about women. Uh, and again, all these girls are different flavors. So I've been with a girl who's a single mom. I've been with a girl who's like younger than me. I've been with a girl who's like was in a relationship already, and you know, I could go into that later. You know, different flavors, different beliefs. Uh, Although you could paint a broad brush about how women act in general, which I know that's gonna sound bad, but who cares? That's what we're doing here. If you don't like it, fuck off. Um, and men as well do behaviors that are you could in general they do. You could say they definitely do that most of the time. Anyway, uh, yeah, I got fired from that job over circumstances which I could explain later. And yeah, I was unemployed for the longest time, and I was still watching Black Pill videos. It's not like all what I was doing. Like I don't know how obsessed people are with like the men's issues in dating. I can understand why. Like, let's say if you're like a virgin or something like that, or haven't had a lot of sex, why you would feel enraged and keep watching shit like this. But I don't even think even then the average dude who is a virgin or deselected or has to have a lot of sex, not 24/7 watching this shit, right? That's just something I think people who hate men say. They're like, oh, he's online 8 hours a day watching fucking on the incel forums and shit. Like, I don't think so, right? Um, it's like people have lives out of this shit. You know, people enjoy other shit, enjoy things like watch movies, fucking play video games, fucking go to the gym, or uh, they draw or like do something. People have something they like, you know, whatever it is. So anyway, yeah, I'm still watching this. You know, found a new job, whatever. I've had you know, like a lot of one night stands, honestly. You know, I had this like era in my life since I didn't go to college, or I didn't party in high school or like go to college. I never really went out partying or drinking. So like when I was 21, even when I turned 21, I never really went out to go drink. But when I found like the stars aligned again, I found a friend group where I would just go out all the time and drink, and that's where I would get the occasional one night stands, and it was pretty fun. I mean, looking back, there's a lot of waste of money, but I guess uh, you know, my drive to get laid was just, I mean, that's how it is, whether men want to deny it or not. Sorry, I had to burp again. Anyway, I'm watching that. I'm watching Black Pill shit. I stopped the partying phase due to factors which I could get into later. Partying and clubbing phase, and I had discovered fucking a City Crusher, right? Some other YouTuber, MRA, which I didn't know at the time. He would just talk about things that I'd see other black pillars talk about, and other like quote unquote manosphere, which I'm not a part of the manosphere. I deny the manosphere, right? It's just fucking stupid, and it's also like a word to paint men as, you know, you could say, oh, I like the book, uh, I like the fucking you could like something that's male centric and made that men relate to, and they'll call it manosphere, right? So if I like a song about like a man being lonely and going through a bunch of shit, they're like, oh, that's misogynistic manosphere bullshit, right? Like Kanye West Gold Digger could be like one of those things. Or like, oh, uh, it feeds stereotypes about this, or like it's part of the patriarchy, which doesn't exist, but we'll talk about that later. So I run into this channel, right? His channel, and I'm like, man, this guy says some good ass stuff, right? And he's also like debunking like the red pill, and like putting into question these dynamics with like, you know, the false accusations of men, or like the, you know, HR workplace. You know, in my, you know, when I was not having sex and I would not get sex, it would make me, you know, angry and frustrated and sad. Well, and when I finally got that sex, I was happy, right? But in a way, I was like, okay, well, I got the sex now. Now what? I still feel like people like intrinsically disrespect me and have this hate for me in a way, right? I couldn't explain it or put my finger on it, right? It's like, how would a man who gets sex feel this way, right? And who has had validation from women, which we'll talk about that later on. So how, you know, we're discovering the black pill. You say you don't get sex, right? You get sex, and it's supposed to solve everything, right? And I'll let some dudes be the judge of all the girls I've slept with, which I have pictures, right? Some of them were very attractive, you know, but it's not about that really. And I would always hear guys say who, like, let's say we're athletes and stuff like that, who had success before I did, getting sex or just being with women. They would say shit like that, but they never be quite honest. They'd always say like, or it'll always be like, it's not fulfilling because I want a family or some shit like that. I was never with that. I disavowed family and marriage from like at least uh high school, right? I was like, man, fuck this. I'm just not a fan. I don't want to do it. Again, that could stem from my childhood or whatever. More like a personal lifestyle thing. But anyway, I discovered. So when I was watching the Black Pill content, I was like, something is still off, right? And I would lose these jobs or whatever, and that's another reason why I was like, like, and this dude, City Crusher, would fucking put into question these things. Okay, like, okay, the male draft, misandry, which I didn't know. It's not a word people use because I think it's purposely it's not used because it's saying people will look at misandry and say men will use it as an excuse to, let's say, quote unquote, be lazy, right? Which anytime you talk about yourself as a man, you always get these things like you're a bum or lazy or you're just insecure, shit like that. So in a way, I was like, wait, so I can't just genuinely feel that I want some dignity or to say certain things about myself without it being wrong, right? So, and he would say those things, right? And then he like went after the black pillars, right? So I was like, okay, this guy's going after something I've, devoted so much energy to, and his point, he had good arguments against them, right? Um, I wasn't like, no, who's this guy? At first, I was skeptical, right? I had seen his stuff about the gender dynamics, about like, okay, men being pushed out the job market, or conscription, or like circumcision, or the false accusations, and like the censorship of male media, right? And like how like uh, men's sexuality is always seen as bad, whether consuming porn and all that. We're all the bad guys, basically. Everything we do is shit, right? And even if you do call to have merits to prove yourself, they're never enough, right? So anyway, and then I found out his videos on the black pill. I was like, like, what is he gonna say about this? But he didn't make sense. In a way, I was kind of denying it. I was like, this guy's just coping, you know. Even though you could see his face, I was like, oh, okay, well, he's old. He's kind of out the game by virtue of him being old, right? But no, dude, I was never like, I'm just gonna dismiss this guy because he's a coping old guy out the game. What does he know? But he was saying things like that held weight. Sorry, but yeah. So then that's how I discovered about like, oh, the status thing, and um, how what you provide and how good are you at something. Basically proves you as a man, your value as a man. And the more better at it, and the more fucking, um, I guess, whatever you're good at, whatever you do, just make sure the better you are, the more respect you're gonna get. And the person who is the best at that something has the most respect, right? And what is the respect a sign of? Status symbol, status, rank, hierarchy, all this shit. It's just this that just boils down to it. And I couldn't unsee it from that point on. It made so much sense, right? Because in the black pill, you know, I would see good looking dudes like, how would, and then, you know, this is two separate points, right? So status is everything, right? Because you would see, and like another reason why why I agreed with the black pill, because he would say good looking dudes get taken out to cleaners, right? And I would notice that too, right? I say, why are all these good looking guys who have sex with women, who work basic jobs, still have trouble finding a girlfriend, right? And that's where he would say, okay, it's about status, right? And then that makes so much sense, because like there's be some dude who's not like this fucking supermodel, super attractive guy. He's just be an average looking dude, but he has something to offer that girl which she doesn't have and she wants, right? So it made so much sense, right? And from that point on, I was like, just, and then I, you know, found out about the MRM, the men's rights. You know, I was like, okay, like we really, this is way more compelling, and you know, it stresses the individual as men, as solidarity, unity, and stuff like that. I was like, okay, I like this. You know, no race. We don't care about race. You know, shit like that. Which I didn't care about race ever, really. Religion. We don't care about religion, race. You know, ethnicity, nationality. You know, this is strictly for by man for man, all for by man for all men, basically. And you know, and then that's how I discovered like fucking the other channels, which I'm not gonna name here. Um, like, you know who you are if you're watching, right? So yeah, that's how I got led to the MRM and becoming an MRA, right? And advocating for men, right? Or spreading awareness about these things, right? Um, so that's basically like how I'm here now on this channel. We're gonna be talking about, you know, the gender dynamics, the structural violence against men, which I coined that term from another MRA. I don't know if he wants credit. If you want credit, let me know. uh, just how like shit, you know, debunking myths about people that people believe about um how about men, right? So yeah, so there's just, it's all encompassing, right? Um, like nowadays dating is, even though it always was to me an afterthought, it's definitely an afterthought, right? Uh, there's so much way more important stuff like jobs, fucking conscription, fucking um, you know, shit that men like that is getting censored. You know, this anti-porn thing that's going on right now. All this needs to be talked about. You know, this is the real counterculture, right? Men always try to separate themselves, but this is, no one's talking about this. No one's talking about this, and it is getting promoted because it it's it's that way on purpose. So anyway, um, that's how I went, my life story for how I became for to become an MRA. Yeah, so I'm gonna see how long this video is. It's kind of been going on for a while now. I didn't think I'd speak this long on this shit, but yeah, I guess I got some work to do and some editing, and I'll see you guys till the next video.